Hey, hi, hello. It's the LaSala Show. Episode 15, December 16th, 2020. My guest today is Mr. Phillip Whitman. Dear friend. And let's get right into it. LaSala Show. My guest today is Mr. Phillip Whitman. Phil, how say you, sir?
I'm doing well, man. How about you?
Fantastic, man. I'm getting reacclimated to Louisiana.
Oh, that's cool. You're back in town?
Oh yeah, we got out of Brooklyn because it was getting a little crazy, and just coming to chill until things calm down.
You brought your fiance down?
Oh yes. She's
awesome, man. That's cool.
She's getting in on the food and, loving the weather. Yeah. So
first time being here?
She came down a few years back to meet the family for Christmas, but now she's actually here, and it's a culture shock.
Yeah, it's different than Brooklyn, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I didn't live in Brooklyn, but I've obviously been there. We hung out in Brooklyn a couple times, you and I.
Oh yeah.
My uncle lived in Brooklyn at the beginning of the pandemic, and then his wife, they left, in February and March when it was really getting crazy. They skipped town before they basically stopped people from doing that and drove to his sister-in-law's place in Massachusetts.
Damn.
And then I think they just moved to Long Island. I haven't talked to him recently, but they basically got out of Brooklyn as well. I'd be interested to hear, what it was like for you during all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, because, go ahead.
No, it was just, crime ridden. People started taking more chances on the streets.
Yeah.
You couldn't really go out past sunset. And especially in our neighborhood, it was Crown Heights, but it was sort of on the verge of being a shady neighborhood. Really nice building, but a kind of crappy neighborhood.
I think I've been to Crown Heights. I'm trying to remember. Is that by Stuyvesant?
It's a little south of there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a friend of mine. I'm trying to remember. A friend of mine had actually it wasn't an apartment. He was staying, I believe, in that neighborhood. And it was he was staying in basically an illegal row house where there was a bunch of dudes sharing one it's like a dorm style.
Yeah.
And I slept on the floor, not even a mattress. I think I just laid a blanket down. It was kind of a crazy New York night. But yeah, I've been in that neighborhood. I know what you're saying. And I'm sure, my impression is that the police kind of pulled back.
Exactly.
And the crime was worse. That's my...
Yeah, just a little too expensive of a place. Too expensive of a place to live when you can't really go out and do anything or go anywhere. That's the whole reason you live in New York, is to be accessible to all these places and things and great restaurants and venues. And if you're not even going to go to any of those things, then what's the fucking point of being there?
Yeah, I agree, man. You're absolutely right. New York's very expensive, and if you're going to be there to do stuff, can't do stuff, what's the point? Same thing, people have been moving away from LA for a similar reason.
Right.
Which is if you're going to pay all that money to just sit in your house, why don't you go somewhere cheaper,
Yeah.
And Lafayette is definitely cheaper.
Oh yeah, man. Just the grocery list as compared to in Brooklyn is just cut in half, man. And we're getting the same amount of shit. It's insane.
Yeah, I know what you mean, man. I remember the first time I went out in New York to a bar, and I literally didn't believe the price for a beer.
Right.
Which is not groceries, but same basic price situation where I was I just somehow believed that it was for 2 beers. There was no way I was gonna you pay $15 for a beer. Hey, so that's definitely here. Yeah, things are housing's cheaper, food's cheaper. Most things are cheaper here.
So look, you just put out this math workbook for kids?
I did.
When did this start?
Today. So my wife and I, we homeschool our kids, like not every kid every year, but like right now we're homeschooling 2 kids, an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old, and then we have our 3-year-old who, he's not official. He goes to a little school in the morning where you basically just play for a few hours, but he's not really in school, but he likes math. And so we've been teaching him math. And so we've been, we have some experience as educators. I've experienced teaching in general, not just homeschooling. But in the process of trying to basically, my wife couldn't find the kind of workbook she wanted for our son and decided she was going to make one. And so this was starting months ago, working on a much bigger one. And the hope then was to try to get it out before the school year, because a lot of schools are closed, right? You're aware of that phenomenon?
Oh yeah, I lost my job because of it. That's why I moved to Lafayette.
Yep. That sucks, man. Yeah, you have my sympathy. So a lot of schools were closed, or they're going like half virtual or total virtual or whatever, or, half the time, all kinds of mess. And so our kids had gone through that in the spring. So my 16-year-old and my 8-year-old were both in school, and in the spring they went virtual, and like the 8-year-old just didn't. It's hard for an 8-year-old to do that, man, where you like to learn through a computer screen and get your assignments. She just, like, the learning went way down. And so lots of people saw that, and because of that, homeschooling went up. So it went from like basically doubled the rate from like 5 to 10%, like meaning 10% of students, kids of student age, I guess, are homeschooled now, it's a crazy number. Like 10 years ago, it would have been like 1. But because of that, they're going to buy material, but we weren't able to get it together, in time. And so we kind of, once it went past the school start, we kind of set it aside for a while, but then we felt like Christmas was like an opportunity to do that. So to like put out something with a theme, and it's short and it's cheap. So you can try it, and then if people like it, then maybe they'll come back for the bigger one later. So basically, it's a Christmas workbook. It's like 40 pages for toddlers, basically, and preschoolers, like 3-year-olds, really, 2-year-olds. And so my son did a lot of the stuff earlier on and really liked it. He was kind of our test subject. You show him something to see what he thinks about it.
Right.
And my wife did most of the actual like illustration and stuff like that, but she'd kind of like run it by me, ask me what thought made sense. I've studied neuroscience, and so I could give some insight into what the best way to learn is and things like that. And and it turns out with Amazon, so like the work we did in the fall trying to put it out and not working, but you learn a lot. And so this time we're able to kind of actually get it out. And so you can self-publish things on Amazon, and it's not that hard. Now, we don't get a whole lot of money, but that's true in general for book publishing. But it's just cool to like be able to do that. Like you write a book, and with Amazon, you follow their process, and you can sell it. They'll print it and bind it and ship it to people. So we've gotten some orders already, mostly from family and friends. But it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's badass, man. That's awesome. And your wife's doing all the illustrations and. That you can try it out on your kids too. It's intuitive. I like it. Now you're a math whiz, yes, and
yeah. So
when you're going through these new Common Core mathematic things they're trying to teach the kids, how frustrated do you get when they're seemingly doing more work to get just the same answer that you and I got whenever we were kids?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I'm somewhat aware of Common Core, and like I kind of know where they're coming from, I guess, a little bit. Like my kids have mostly been homeschooled, And so I haven't had a lot of exposure to it. So, like, I mean, I guess did you have to like try to teach that way when you were teaching, or?
Well, I didn't teach math, but I was also working after school, and so I would help kids with their homework, and then they would come up with these problems, and I'd be like, "No, just do it like this," and they're like, "No, that's not how I teach." But I would be like, I got the same answer you got, and I did it in 5 seconds. What are we talking about here?"
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is I'm not a fan of it, but I don't know enough about it. Like, I mean, I think a lot of it is. Well, could you give me an example of like a problem or or one of the issues?
I mean, it would be like it would be like mathematics, and it would be like 47 times 9 or whatever, and then they would like draw out all these boxes and just be like, all right, well, this is 47, this is 9, and then you just like, I don't know, they basically tried to turn it into algebra when it was just the old fashioned mathematic process, or the multiplication process would have been just as easy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, I've read things like that, particularly about multiplication. And I think part of it might be with math, like when you teach someone math, you can kind of teach them two ways, like roughly. Like one way is to try to solve that particular problem as quickly as possible. And another way is to kind of get them to think like abstractly about it. And maybe that will, where it's harder, but then maybe it'll help you down the line.
Right.
So probably they're trying to do the second one, but there's like, for multiplication, it can be useful to just be able to do that quickly. Like and if I want to know, like say I'm going to go into the store and I want to buy 9, cases of something and each one's $47. I kind of just want to be able to do that as fast as possible.
Exactly. And, for most Americans, I would think multiplication and division is about as far as it goes when it comes to math, right? Like, I'm not solving any kind of equations in my everyday life.
Right. I would say that, I mean, I think if for me, to get through your day-to-day life, you want to be able to, add, subtract, multiply, divide. Decimals and fractions, I would say, like, be able to do that for those things as well.
Yeah, calculate a tip.
What's up?
Just to be able to calculate a tip.
Yeah, exactly. Because anytime you're dealing with money of any kind, if you don't understand decimals, that's going to make things difficult for you. But that's kind of the stuff that people mostly do in your day-to-day life. Like, all right, how much does this cost? That type of stuff. And so I would, I haven't thought about the theory of like that level of education too much. I've thought about it some, but like, I think I think it'd be more important to me to have people teach them the things they're going to use. That's like the most important thing, right? I mean, to teach them things they'll actually use in their life. I mean, I'm obviously somebody, like, because I'm a math person, I obviously want people to study as much math as possible. But like, realistically, not everybody's going to do that. And not everybody's going to, remember it. Even if you kind of like make it through it in high school, where you kind of like were able to get through you may not remember it as much when you're older. I mean, I kind of feel like I wish people knew statistics more, because I think it's so important. I mean, it's interesting with COVID is that this early on, there was all of a sudden this interest in statistics, which I thought was pretty cool.
Right.
Where everybody's looking at graphs and stuff and talking about reproduction rate and for like a short, it was kind of obviously a terrible situation, but I was like excited. People were like interested in numbers.
Yeah. I mean, paying attention to graphs and, charts and everything, that's sexy.
Yeah, I thought it was. I didn't really realize it's not sees it that way, but I was excited.
So what are your
about
thoughts?
That, obviously.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on COVID? Since we're talking about it, like, are you super mask everywhere you go, mask in your toilet, mask everywhere, or are you kind of lax? What's the deal?
I think I'm kind of in the middle on a lot of this stuff. So, like, I started off in the beginning, like most people, like freaking terrified, right? Because like you just hear that all these people are dying, and you're just like, you have no idea. People don't know what the death rate is yet, or like how contagious it is. So you're just like, at least for me, I was just basically sitting in my house for a month or two at least. Like, I mean, I don't remember exact timeline, but probably till the end of April, I was just like freaking terrified. Like, I was getting groceries delivered to my house and like wiping them down.
Yeah.
I was like not leaving the house. I mean, we'd go outside. I mean, I'm fortunate. I mean, I live in Lafayette and I have a house with a yard. And so that was fortunate. And then another thing that was kind of both fortunate and not at the same time is that I have 5 kids. So it means I had people to interact with. On the other hand, I was trapped at home with 5 kids. So it's kind of,
yeah.
Depends on how you look at it, whether that's good or bad. But, yeah, so I was super concerned. I did a lot of math about this. I don't know if you were following any of that, but I was like posting graphs and stuff on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
And like trying to how many people would die and stuff like that. I don't know if you saw any of that.
I didn't see the numbers you projected, but is it over or under, you think, now that we look back on it?
So I was trying to project it out like a month or two, and what I projected, I mean, it was pretty close to what I expected. I didn't project beyond a month or two because I just didn't think it was realistic to project that far because like you don't know how things are going to change. I would say the way things have played out, I would say that the death rate is lower than we feared initially, particularly for young people. And on the other hand, it's circulating, right? It's contagious. So people are getting it a lot. So I would say kind of it's come out better in the sense that it doesn't kill as many people. It doesn't kill as many people as a proportion of who gets it. But a lot of people are getting it. I've been like, I think we could have handled it better. Although a lot of countries didn't, our death rate is not, if you look at it per population, there's some other countries that have had, like in Europe, that have had worse ones. But so basically I went from being really afraid at the beginning. The numbers of people our age, if you're healthy, the chance of you dying from this is really, really low. Like the CDC says the proportion of people our age who, if the age range to go is like 20 to 50. If you're between 20 and 50, the chance that you're going to die is about 1 in 5,000.
Yeah,
which is pretty low.
Yeah.
And I compared it to other things like car accidents and stuff like that. And like, basically I don't want to get it, but I'm not going to like hide my house for a year to not get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And me and my fiance think we got it in February because we both had these just terrible, terrible colds. I mean, for me it was I couldn't talk without coughing. And like I couldn't get like a sentence out. I couldn't take like a normal healthy breath. And then it just went away in like 2-3 days. I didn't have a fever. I could still taste things. And so maybe it wasn't, but then my fiance got it hard and she was in bed for like 4 days, sweating, couldn't eat. She went to the urgent care and they told her it looks like the flu, but I don't know, just take this Tamiflu. And so we think that just by way of being on the subway every day for up to an hour and a half at a time, we may have gotten it and just came off of it. That's not to say that we have the antibodies and we're immune to it, because I think there are people that have gotten it more than once. But it's just, it's a fucking sticky disease where, one person can have it and have no symptoms, and the other person you're sharing a bed with can get it and have like all these symptoms.
Yeah, I mean, and so, like, I think the thing now is that, like, if I was really old or really sick, I would definitely be staying at home. And if I lived with somebody who was really old, really sick, I probably would do either I would do the same thing or I'd be really separated from them. But another thing that I read a blog, I made a blog post was about the school opening. So I'm in favor of schools being open, not like without any restrictions. Like I think masks and social distancing and quarantining, all that makes sense. But basically to try to keep the schools open as much as you can. And this again, because it's even less likely for children to die and less likely for them to spread it. So like the research shows that there's really it doesn't contribute that much to the spread. So like I'm in favor of schools being open with masks and distancing and quarantining if somebody's positive or has close contact with a positive. And And then in my life, I try to avoid, like, when I go inside, in Louisiana, there's a mask mandate. So I follow the mandate, right? I wear the mask when I go. If I go grocery shopping, you put the mask on, you go on, do your grocery shopping, you go home. So I'm kind of like, I wear the mask inside. I still, like, I try to see, like, I went over to I don't know, some people might not like this, but, like, my in-laws had Thanksgiving at their house. But it was just our family and them, right? And so for me, based on what I read, it didn't seem like it was likely that was going to cause any issue. And so we went over there for Thanksgiving. So just 2 households, so I'm due a little bit, like, I'm not going to totally cancel my life, but I'm kind of trying to avoid social contact, particularly with people I don't know, or see regularly. And then I wear a mask when I'm supposed to, basically,
Yeah. I mean, look,
and I all the way on either side. Go ahead.
It's all about calculated risks, I think. And you're not just gonna go out to a club or some shit. I guess bars aren't really open. Oh, are bars open down here? Am I crazy? I thought I saw Cafe Cottage open, and I know they have the loophole. I guess the loophole is, yeah, we're a bar, but we serve like hot dogs in the back for 50 cents, and so now we can be considered a restaurant, or like, it's very bizarre the way it's different down here.
Should be good now.
Yeah, man, it sounds clear as fuck.
Great.
All right, and 3, 2, 1. And we're back with Mr. Phillip Whitman. We were discussing how bars are being able to be open in most of probably the South, with the loophole that you can have food served, so technically it's a restaurant, quote unquote. Have you seen this?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. And there's been discussion about the enforcement in general in Lafayette, and I'm guessing more broadly. But, like, yeah, so you have to serve food, and there's some threshold of how much food you have to serve. I don't understand all of it. But I will say one thing. I won't say where it was because I don't want to, I just won't say where it was. But I will say that my wife and I, we wanted to go out the other day because we had our in-laws babysat and went to go get a drink. And the plan was, go get a drink. You in a restaurant, usually you wear a mask until you get food or drink, and then you take it off to eat or drink. And so you get the drink, and then if the place is empty mostly, then you just get a booth, and then you can take your mask off to drink it, or we go outside. And we went to a place, and basically it was packed with no masks. And that was a surprise to us. Not particularly being enforced. I mean, there's an issue of how easy it would be to enforce, even if you wanted to. Like, it's not a law, it's a mandate from the governor. So it's kind of, I don't know. And there's a lot of political opposition here, more so than New York, I would imagine, to masks at all, really.
Yeah. I mean, just going to the Chevron station down the street, they have signs up on the glass door before you walk in, please wear a mask. Or masks are required, actually, I think it says.
Yeah.
And our first day here, we went to go grab a 6-pack and some, Cheetos, and we were the only people in the store wearing a mask. Even the guy behind the counter didn't have a mask on, and we looked like morons. They were like shaming us with their eyes.
That was how I felt when I went to this place. Is I walked in and there's all these people there, and like I was the only one that had a mask on, and so you look and feel foolish at that point. I think it depends where you go and like what neighborhood you're in and like that kind of stuff. I know the grocery store that I go to, which is Albertsons, they're pretty strict. Like you walk in the door and they have a person sitting at a table with like those like the surgical masks, I guess.
Right.
And they'll sell you one for $1 if you don't have one. But I don't think you're getting in without one. I mean, I think you have to at least put it on to walk through the door. And when you're walking around, most people have one on. I keep mine on until I leave. So it depends where you're going, whether or not you have to wear it or not. I mean, so that's interesting. The bar thing, look, I mean, I will say this, that I do not so much masks. I mean, a little bit masks, but I mean, in general with the lockdowns, I do feel bad for people if you have a small business, people put a lot into a small business, like running a restaurant or a bar or a cafe, and like you can't really make a living with like it half full. You know, like to make a living, it kind of has to be full sometimes.
Exactly.
But my feeling about this kind of stuff is that you can, for me, if the place can stay open, if I wear a mask, I'd rather wear the mask so they can stay open, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. People don't realize how much it takes to keep a local restaurant in business. I mean, it is truly a crapshoot. I mean, I've never even been close to trying to run one, but I've been behind the scenes and seen like what they're working with and how hours get cut and, you know, staggering people's paychecks and shit. Like, it is a masterful job that they do. And this just throws a whole fucking monkey wrench in it. And then with the PPP or whatever, that the stimulus bill tried to help people out, and Sonic, the fucking drive-through, gets like $1 million of their own money back, or that's probably a gross estimation, but
yeah,
it's just so sickening to see how some big corporations and chain restaurants are getting all this massive influx of cash, and like all these little tiny restaurants are like, well, sorry, you got to close down.
Yeah, I mean it's terrible. Like, I mean the fact that like it's not fair. Like, I mean, so certainly like big tech companies are making a fortune, right? I mean, when everyone's stuck at home, Amazon, Facebook, Google, they're all doing great, right? Because people are going to Facebook, so they generate ad revenue. People are ordering everything through Amazon, and like, you know, so they're all doing great. And then with the PPP, you're right. From what I've read, there's a lot of it where like big businesses that didn't really need it were getting a lot of the money, and then smaller businesses weren't getting it. And I mean, it's like, it's not like that's, you know, it's sad because, you know, with a small business, I mean, Lafayette in particular has a lot of small businesses, a lot of local restaurants. Like, we're known for our food. And, you know, if you lose a local restaurant, like, you're not really going to replace that. You know, if you have a local restaurant that's like a fixture that's been there for decades, if it goes out of business and it gets replaced with, you know, a McDonald's or something, that's not the same thing. You know, it affects the city and the people. And so I want them to be open. And I think bars are kind of an easier target. People don't like bars, you know, like as much as restaurant, like the government, I guess, or, you know, it's easy to kind of shit on bars.
Right.
But I mean, it's the same thing. It's, you know, a local, you know, small business, I want them to be open as well. And so I don't like the masks. I prefer not to wear them. I don't wear them outside generally unless it's really packed. You know, if I'm close to people, then maybe. But generally, I'm walking around, I'm not wearing it. But inside, I'll wear it. I mean, that'll help people stay open. So
yeah, I just wear it on my chin when I'm outside, because you never know if somebody's gonna come up and start coughing
then you
on
can
you or some
put
shit.
It on.
But and also, I just want to let everybody know, like, I'm trying to do the right thing. But as soon as I get into a place where I'm approaching a business, I pop it up and I walk in, get my shit, and get out. Like, it's that easy, people. I don't understand what the hell. Like, they have like this daddy issue, like, oh, nobody's gonna tell me what to do. So well, it's like a deeper psychological issue, I think, than people realize.
There's a lot going on here. I mean, I think that people don't trust the government. I know people don't trust the government. I mean, a lot of people don't trust the government. A lot of and I mean, I don't trust the government particularly either.
Yeah, me either. I'm just trying to be nice. I'm just trying to do what they tell me.
The other thing I will say, it's something that I've noticed in a couple of situations. So, for instance, one thing. So, my grandmother passed away early on in the pandemic. Not at the very beginning. Like, at the very beginning, people were just not having funerals, right?
Right.
Like, you just couldn't have a funeral. But then by the time it happened with me, you could have one, but there were like limits on people and you had to wear masks. So we had the funeral, and whereas her husband, when he died like 6-7 years ago, there was like a bunch of people. It was like a big deal. There was like, I don't know, might have been a couple hundred people there. Part of it is that it's a big family. Like my grandparents had 8 children, and they had a bunch of grandchildren, and you know that kind of multiplies out. But so for this one, it couldn't be. So rather than last time where I got to meet some friends of my grandfather, There was none of that, right? But the other thing was that we wore masks for the funeral, which made sense to me. But it also, like, talking to somebody with a mask on is not the same as talking to them without a mask on.
Oh, I know.
I mean, it's hard to have a conversation. Like, I don't know, man. And it's particularly like an emotional conversation.
Yeah, you're crying through your mask and you're wearing sunglasses. You just look like a fucking character on Call of Duty or something.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I think that's another part is that, like, it just sucks to wear a mask. Like, it like going to the grocery store doesn't bother me because I'm just going to the grocery store. But, like, to seeing your friends or, you know, there's an element of distance there, which is sad. And so it's not, and that's the reason why we didn't wear them before. It's the reason why we didn't always just wear masks forever. So, I mean, I know, because I know I have friends who are pretty anti-mask. And so I want to at least give them some kind of a fair representation, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And especially, look, when the heat ramps up down here and it's swamp-ass season and everybody's sweating their beards off and they're getting pimple breakouts for the ladies and it's just like their makeup is running onto the mask.
Right.
And, you know, I get it. But also it's just like, what are the pros and cons of this? And if you're outside, definitely take it off for sure, unless you're just shouting into somebody's face like a drive-through or something. But I don't know, man. The people that are so hell-bent against it are the ones that I worry about because it's a little deeper than just the mask, I think.
Yeah, there's a big cultural issue going on here, which is like for the end of the country, and this is like one feature of that issue. I mean, and so because like a lot of the anti-mask stuff is on the right, like right-wing people, and I think they just don't trust. They don't trust the government, and they don't want to be told what to do. There's also an element. I mean, they don't believe the public health people. I mean, so for this one in particular, there's a couple of reasons I think you could think why that was. So remember at the beginning, they told us not to wear masks.
Yeah, Fauci, and he claimed it was because he needed to save all the masks for the healthcare workers, right?
Yeah, he did say that, but he also said, which makes sense actually, but he also said don't wear them because they won't really help you. It'll give you a false sense of security, and it won't actually stop the spread. So the first part, where what you said, would have been fine. But when you said the second part, the problem is when you come back later and say you definitely have to wear them, people are skeptical.
Exactly.
And I think that's been an issue. Is like you got to be honest. Like if you don't know for sure, I mean that's my feeling about stuff. Like if you don't know for sure, then say so. Like we're not sure, but we feel like at this point, like if you say something with absolute certainty and then come back later and say actually that's totally wrong.
Right.
It's the exact opposite. People are going to be like, well, wait, why did how can that be? And there's also look, there's also the fact that a lot of the people who were pro-mask, like they weren't saying anything about mass protests in the summer, which I think got under a lot of people on the right wing.
Well, yeah, because of the Black Lives Matter protests and not being able to go to church on the other side.
Yeah, so that people look at that and like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like, if it really was that bad, you wouldn't allow that. You wouldn't allow the mass protests,
Yeah, it's a sticky ass situation, man. But
yeah,
tell me this. Okay.
Yeah.
Did Trump help any of this out?
Did he help any of this out? I mean, so I guess, all right. I think one thing that I feel like I should give him credit for, at least to some degree, is I do believe that his administration played a role in the vaccines being developed.
See, but I heard differing things that it was actually developed in Germany.
So for one thing, there's more than one vaccine.
Right. There's the Moderna and I can't even pronounce the other one because I'm a moron.
Right. So I know
You're not supposed to agree with me, Phil.
Okay. Sorry, I'm supposed to argue with you.
No, you're supposed
it's
to
more
not,
interesting.
You can't agree with me when I tell myself I'm a moron.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention. You're not a moron. You're very smart. I was trying to read about the vaccine, so I have to admit I was checked out. I wasn't paying attention. I apologize. So you're not a moron, Jesse. You're very smart, man. I apologize. So I have read what you're saying where it was it was developed in Germany, but I also know that what he was doing was they were like funding lots of different vaccine developments. So I think that may be the role he played. And so I don't claim to know everything here. I do believe he had his administration had something to do with it. That either they funded it, it was called Operation Warp Speed.
Right.
So the Pfizer vaccine was co-developed with a German firm. So Pfizer is a U.S. company, and I believe they got money from the government, from the Trump administration. And then there's the other one, which is Moderna. Let's think it's Moderna. Let me see.
Yeah, Moderna, and
yeah.
I just can't pronounce the other one. It's like
yeah. So they funded it, and so I think they deserve some credit for that. Like, I don't know how much, but like you should, that's something. With respect to the other stuff, so the mask thing, I think I could blame both Trump and the media for making it political. Right. So I think if I were the president, I probably would have been more pro-mask once that became the policy, and been a little more, I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but I think I probably would have been a little bit more wear the mask and not make fun of it or whatever. But
right, he was actively telling people during his speech, like, "Hey, take that mask off, take it off," and then
and that doesn't seem like a great thing to be doing. Yeah, I would agree. Also, though, but the media, it's like the media has to jump on him and then make it into a political. I feel like the media has some responsibility for making it too political, where it's don't take the bait. I don't know. I mean, I have to go back and read it again. But my feeling at the time was that the media was also pushing really hard that if you didn't wear a mask, because you were a stupid conservative. And I don't think there's no point in saying that. I feel like it's a lot of times that way where it's unnecessarily Trump and the media kind of feed off each other and are both unnecessarily hostile.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so Trump, he bears some responsibility for that, particularly so that wasn't great. What else?
Well, here's my next thing. You mentioned to me while we were talking offline about how the Trump economy is going to be different from the Biden economy. What are your statistics for that?
Okay. So I actually don't remember that I said that specifically, but maybe I did. So I can look. I've got some stuff
along the lines of it may not necessarily be the best thing for the economy.
So let me look at I made some notes about things like this. So let's see. So the first thing I would say is that, so before the pandemic, U.S. economic growth was very good. So under his presidency, the economic growth was good. And then during the pandemic, our economy has actually been better than a lot of other industrialized nations. So those are two things that I think you can, for better or for worse, say Trump is good. So I guess to your point of what would happen with Biden. So I think Biden may be more open to, or has actually said that he's more open to lockdowns, I think. And I think lockdowns are devastating.
Right.
And so, unless you have a well-executed, PPP type of plan, then if you have lockdowns, you're going to continue to have economic suffering.
Yeah.
And so I think the way you could look at Trump, one way to contrast Trump and Biden is that Trump is a little more likely to prioritize economy versus COVID and vice versa. And so that's one element of the situation. Right now, the World Health Organization and me also, I pretty much oppose lockdowns at this point. I think restrictions make sense, but totally making everybody not work, I don't think, based on what we know, is the right policy. And so if Biden does that, then I would think that would be a mistake. So I mean, I could pull up statistics. I don't have it with me, unfortunately, but like about that the economy basically was doing well before the pandemic. And even since then, even though it's been bad, it's better than a lot of, like, say, for instance, European countries.
Right.
And it's also true that our death rate is high, but if you normalize your population, there are other countries like, say, the United Kingdom or Spain or I believe Italy who
Brazil.
all have higher death rates. So, I mean, to your question about whether he deserves credit or what, I mean, I think he deserves both blame and credit. I don't think that he's done – I think he should have done, I guess, in some sense, a better job. I don't know if Biden would have. So that's always the thing when you're talking about, this last election, is that it's not, you're choosing between two very, very much imperfect people.
Absolutely. This is like a shit show of timing for a global pandemic for our country. I mean, just the whole election year, and it comes out. That's another thing that's a little, I don't know, makes you scratch your head a little bit. Like, oh, this just happens to come out right whenever it's the election year. It's
easy to I don't know. What's interesting about this is if you say the wrong thing about this stuff, then YouTube will take your video down, which I think is really weird.
I can't wait till YouTube pulls one of my podcasts. I can't wait.
Yeah.
So
this has happened to other people, like Brett Weinstein, we're both a fan of, has talked about this. I don't know if he's actually got any podcast taken out. I think he may have. I think Tim Pool was another guy that I follow, has done that as well.
Yeah, Brent and Eric Weinstein. I didn't vote because of I was on my way to vote for Biden just because, I was like, all right, lesser of two evils. I'll go do my civil duty and go vote. And I was listening to Eric Weinstein's podcast, and he was like, it was a 4-hour podcast, but I just listened to the first, however many minutes it took me to get to the polling station, and he just, like, crushed everything I had to go vote. I was just like, dude, fuck both of these people. Like, this is a huge disappointment for the United States.
Yes. It's bad. I mean, the choice we had was bad in a lot of ways. And so Brett, of course, you're probably aware of Brett's, like, Unity 2020 thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think he had, I don't know if you heard this podcast where he had another guy named Jesse Single and James Lindsay on. Did you hear that?
I didn't hear that one.
That was an interesting one, and I listened to it. So he had these Unity 2020, what he called campfires, where basically a podcast. But the three of them had a podcast where Jesse Single was a Biden voter. Brett Weinstein wrote in Tulsi Gabbard, who's a Democrat from Hawaii, but like a very like independent Democrat. You know her?
She actually went on Rogan. She was ex-military, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. She's Samoan. She has she's introduced some controversial bills recently. We don't have to necessarily get into, but she's very independent-minded, basically. And so he had tried to like draft people. He's basically trying to start a third party-ish type of thing where it's like, look, both the parties are terrible. Both candidates are terrible. I'm not going to vote for these people because they're both terrible. Here's my write-in. It's kind of a protest vote, but also trying to build a movement, I think. And then James Lindsay, who is a Trump voter, but he's a Trump voter who also was an Obama voter, I believe a Hillary voter, and I believe he worked on Obama's campaign. So he's not, this guy's not an ordinary Republican. So he identifies himself as a liberal.
Right.
And so they had a debate or discussion about it where basically they would kind of take turns, being grilled by the other two and stuff like that. And I thought it was very interesting. And I think, the choice was bad. I think Biden. So the things I fear about Biden. So I guess the thing, I don't know which one I fear the most, but so let's start with his age, right? He's 78 years old. And he seemed very much to me to be kind of losing it as the campaign went on. And so he's like hiding. He's like barely doing any public appearances.
Yep.
When he does them, they don't go very well. He kind of loses his train of thought. And so it seems like if he wasn't in poor health, why would they hide him so much? And so that's, he's the oldest guy to be elected for president ever. No one's ever been older when they were elected the first time, at the very least. Reagan was pretty old. But let's see, how old was Reagan when he got reelected? I don't think even when Reagan was reelected, I don't think he was that old. Yeah. So there's never been anybody elected president as old as Joe Biden.
Right. And for the optics of it, the stutter, which I know anybody who makes fun of anybody with some sort of underlying, disability, like a stutter,
right?
That's shitty. That's fucked up. But it also doesn't look good for a nation that's trying to get behind somebody.
Yeah, I'm not going to make fun of someone for having for a stutter, obviously, but yeah, it's part of the job of president is being a public speaker. But I'm more concerned about a cognitive decline, and I felt like when you watched him speak toward the end of the campaign versus like 5 or 10 years ago, he did not seem as sharp.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, look, if you have relatives, some people can be sharp at that age, but generally you start to kind of fade. I mean, the idea that 78-year-old could be president, I mean, not just 78, but imagine if he wins, or he has won, but if he gets reelected, then at the end of the second term, he'd be 86.
Yeah, that's...
I mean, 86-year-old man, or even the first term, 82. I mean, that's pretty old. I mean, he could be, but like the evidence suggested he wasn't. So that's one issue. And then Harris, I feel like we don't know very well. Like, she didn't do much. I don't feel comfortable with her as the president. She did very poorly in the primary. She lost pretty early on.
Yeah.
She has a lot of weird, like, prosecutorial stuff where she was like, I don't know, pretty tough prosecutor in California.
Oh yeah, she was denying DNA requests for seemingly innocent prisoners.
Yes.
For weak charges and.
So I'm not a fan of hers, but so obviously if he dies or if he gets his health deteriorates enough, she'll become president or maybe by default kind of run things behind the scenes. So that and then that made me nervous. Another thing that bothered me was like the role of the media. So like the role of the media in a healthy democracy is to report objectively on the news. And then with that, not to be afraid of criticizing the president, right? And during the campaign, I feel like the media was very afraid to criticize Biden. And if he's the president, that's not good, man. The media's got to be able to criticize him, That's like a check on the presidency. And so if the media is not, and like there's a few examples of this where the media will like suppress stories for him that they would have amplified for Trump.
Oh yeah.
And vice versa. And so it's frightening and not just media, but also social media.
Yeah. Well,
and so
it's
if he's the president, go ahead.
It's terrible either way, but I'm just glad that Trump is out just for my own soul. Like my own like personal glow is just happy that this fucking moron who if he paid me to fly to Mar-a-Lago and have a round of golf with him, I would politely decline.
Right.
It's just like, I'm sorry, sir. Like, you've said too many things. You've done too many things that I'm relieved that he's gone. My only fear is, and I want your take on this, is the sycophants of Trump who are going to seemingly take to the streets and they're stocking up on ammo and they're gonna fight for this election and
we'll see what happens there. I mean, I do think so. There are a lot of people who feel like the election was stolen, right? I mean, that's probably not news to you, right?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, look, there are a few states that I have in mind that are bordering this.
Yeah.
State.
So I'll say that, and I think there's sort of two levels of this. I think one level is that there's a belief that there was explicit voter fraud. So basically, in these states like,
Wisconsin,
Georgia, Arizona, these like ones where it's close, right? Where it's like 0.5% or something, that they believe that there was enough voter fraud or things like that, like irregularities or whatever, to swing the election to Trump, and that therefore the election was stolen. And so my view on that is like, maybe. And if Trump thinks that, or his administration thinks that, then you can, there's a legal process, right? So there's a legal process you go through where you can file lawsuits and you can ask for recounts and stuff like that. And to be honest, I actually felt like that was good. And the reason I do is that, like, if there wasn't voter fraud, which I think is probably, well, I won't even say whether I think it's more likely or not. Let's just say if there was voter fraud, if there wasn't voter fraud, then I would rather as thorough investigation as possible would hopefully answer people's concerns, right? Whereas if you didn't investigate it at all, it'd be a lot easier to say, well, we don't know. Probably it was. If it wasn't, why wouldn't they investigate it? So I actually feel like the investigation, the recounts, I kind of would rather. I'm glad to some degree that they took place. I don't like the way that they went about it. I think it didn't make a lot of sense. But like some kind of due diligence didn't bother me.
Well, I think William Barr, that was the first domino to fall where he wouldn't comply with Trump's theory that it was stolen. And then he left. And then even today, Mitch McConnell. When Mitch McConnell says that Joe Biden won, I'm sorry. That man is the actual devil. And
they voted, right? I mean, like, I think that they had the Electoral College voted, right?
Right. So
at that point, then it is like that's the point where you say. So if you look back, Al Gore didn't concede for 38 days in the 2000 election.
Right. The hanging
but at some
Chad.
point he did, right? And like this is the time where Trump is free to file any kind of legal any lawsuits he wants, but we have you have an electoral process, you have an illegal process, and you have to abide by that process in the end. I actually do think that's what's going to happen. I don't think there's any way that he's going to try to stay. I think we have a strong enough democracy that, like, there was an election, there was an electoral college vote, and legal appeals are drying up, and I think they will ultimately fail, and Biden will become the president in January. And I think, whether or not there was fraud, like, the point is to follow the process, right? We had the election. You think there's fraud, you have your lawsuits, you have your recounts. They're done. The lawsuits are settled. We move on. That's how the system works, right? We did it in 2000 with Bush and Gore. There was a lawsuit, or some kind of, it was a lawsuit, went up Supreme Court. Supreme Court ruled. That's that. We have a system, right? We have a system and a process. So if you don't abide by it, then the damage there is enormous, right? You have to abide by the process. I think there's a secondary way people think the election was stolen, which is not quite the same, because it's not literally stolen, but basically that the media and social media was so obsessed with, like, amplifying good news for Biden and suppressing bad news for Biden, and amplifying bad news for Trump and suppressing good news for Trump, that they, like, affected the election in a significant way. And, like, I think there's some truth to that, but that's not the same thing as a stolen election. It's something else,
Yeah. Would you say the stock market is more stable with a Democratic president and not somebody that just shoots from the hip and nobody knows how their money's going to go based on what this guy's saying from any day to day?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I really don't know, man. I'd have to go back and look at the data for, like, so the presidencies we've had, so Trump most recently, then we had Obama, then we had Bush, then we had Clinton. So I don't know. I think,
the numbers say that the economy thrives on Democratic presidents.
Well, Clinton for sure. Bill Clinton, things went well. And then Bush, I think you could argue less well. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated, but, like, if you want to hold him responsible for 2008, like, he was still president when that started, like the collapse. And so I don't know who you want to hold responsible for that. But, like, I think Bill Clinton, the economy performed well. the Trump economy, as far as I know, there was growth, and there were it was fairly broadly distributed, meaning like poor people did better, and also racially, like black people did better, Latinos did better, like relative to themselves. Everyone had an improvement up until the pandemic, obviously, which didn't. So I think it depends a lot on what Biden's policies are, and that's another thing I wanted to get at with Biden, is that he hasn't really said, particularly before the election, he didn't say what he was going to do.
Exactly.
And that is sort of scary.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because I have no idea what the dude is going to do. He voided taking almost any position on anything. And so it's a big question mark what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Obviously I hope for the best. I mean, when Trump was elected, I hope for the best as well. It's like you hope the person can step up to the challenge and do a good job. You have an election and, whoever it is, I'm American. I want America to be successful. So whoever the president is, I hope that they will do a good job. So I'm hoping he will. But I think, I do feel that there's legitimate reason to be frustrated and unhappy with media, because I didn't think that they did their job in terms of scrutinizing Biden. And now he's the president, or will be the president soon, overwhelmingly likely. And we're going to have to, if the media won't criticize him, then that's frightening to me.
Yeah, I think it's more of Trump was so egregious with his attitude and his words that they were just focusing so much on that. And now, when Biden gets in, everybody can focus on actually policy, because he's not going to say anything crazy except "shut up." Would you shut up, man? That's
come
the
on,
craziest
man,
thing.
shut up. I mean, he said a few things that were a little sketchy, like where he told Charlemagne that he wasn't black.
Oh yeah, you're not black if you don't vote.
Right, that's a ridiculous thing to say to somebody. I mean, every once in a while, we'll say stuff like that. I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't know. I hope that the media will scrutinize him.
Well, yeah. Again, like what you said, whenever Trump was elected, I was horrified, but at the same time, I was like, well, maybe they're right. Like, maybe he is gonna make a change and expose all this fraud and corruption, and it'll be a good thing. And I was crossing my fingers for it.
Right.
It was all we had. It was our only hope, but it didn't work out that way. I mean, it just kind of didn't. And with Biden, look, I hated the day that he named Kamala Harris his running mate, but she may end up being the actual president, and that's terrifying to me.
Yeah, because we don't really know much about her. What I know is not that positive. Yeah, I mean, I think with Trump, people have a tendency on both sides to be really emotionally affected by what he says.
Right.
And so if they like him, it's because they like what he says. Like, oh, he's sticking it to the liberals. Like, great, And if they hate him, it's because of what he says, because he says a lot of stuff that offends people.
Right.
And so, but less is paid attention to what he actually does, and which I think isn't good either. So I wasn't happy with the coverage of Trump either, because I would rather coverage of okay, this is the policy he's enacting and this is why it's good or bad. And so much of it was the right was isn't it awesome that he wouldn't back down from Jim Acosta, and then the left is isn't it great that Jim Acosta was giving him shit? It's I don't really care about that. I want to, what did he do?
Exactly.
Is it? I mean, and with Biden, it's going to be different. But it's really important for the media. In a functioning democracy, the journalists have to be willing to call the ruling party to account. And certainly in the primary, in the election, they did not do that with Biden. The mainstream media did not do that.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're right that it could change. Maybe if Trump's out of the picture, but I don't. I mean, maybe it'll probably change a little bit, but I'm still kind of concerned about it. And I'm mostly concerned, or even more concerned, about the social media stuff where you suppress things if it goes against what amounts to just the Democratic Party's narrative.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's healthy.
Restricting Twitter and blocking messages from Twitter that he posts at 5 a.m. and his Twitter Cheeto fingers. But some of that shit is irresponsible. Where it's we have people in place to do this and that, and it's just like, is he like speaking in code, like he's about to send out some, random Antifa people or whatever? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's very bizarre. This is a weird world that we're
It's
living
bizarre.
in.
I've always been big on freedom of speech, and like I'm actually also very like I like independent media. Like I like being able to have different voices. I think a lot of times the mainstream can be wrong about stuff.
Oh yeah.
I mean, for instance, the mask thing, the mainstream view is the masks were not useful, and then that turned out to be
Wrong. Yes. You cut out there.
wrong.
Yeah.
Different voices, and like I trust people, at least generally speaking, to be able to hear different things and be able to evaluate them. I don't want to live in a country where we're like suppressing lots of speech. So that's a freedom of speech is a big concern for me, especially social media, and I think there's a chance that will get worse under Biden. Like I said, I don't know because I don't know what he's going to do. But I'm already been kind of amazed by what social media has been willing to do to suppress news stories or ideas they don't like, and I don't think it's healthy. And yeah, so that's definitely a concern for me.
Well, let's end it here on a happier note.
Sure.
Talk about your New Orleans Saints season so far.
Yeah, man, that's been awesome. Except for the last game was kind of crappy. But
I think that's just a blip. Like, y'all weren't prepared for Jalen Hurts and his running ass.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. And it could have been you kind of assume you're going to win because Eagles have a bad record and anything can happen. But yeah, I mean, the Saints, man, they've broken my heart so many times the last few years, where like we have a good team and then the playoffs, like something like horrible happens. Like, we had the Minneapolis Miracle a few years back. Where we were winning they had to score a touchdown from like 60 yards away, and our defensive back tackles the other defensive back.
Yeah, Marcus
and so
Williams.
And so that was pretty crazy. And then the LA Rams thing where the dude tackles our player like 2 seconds before the ball gets there, and they don't call pass interference. They called it. The Saints win the game, which that one was. I've never seen in an important game like that a call that bad.
Yeah, that I was even upset for the integrity of the NFL as a whole, just on that call. And I hate the Saints, but
right, I know you're not a Saints fan, so yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I do think it's like it made me wonder, were these guys like paid off? I mean, like, how could you make a call like that in such an important? I still don't really understand it. Most of the refs are from the LA area, which I don't understand how that happened. It was just one of those things where like I'm not like a football expert, but like I knew that was a penalty law. Like you don't need a replay for that one. Like
exactly.
The dude just got tackled before the ball got there. So that was crazy. So, I'm trying not to get my hopes up too much, and I haven't been watching them that much. I kind of follow it, where I watch some highlights, and maybe I'll watch a game here and there. But yeah, I mean the defense is actually good, which is cool. I'm excited about the defense. Finally being good, but the biggest question is the offense good enough? I mean, Breeze getting hurt was definitely not good, but
insane,
they've been
man.
3-1 since then.
That's insane that he's coming back with broken ribs, possibly as early as next week. Although I don't think it'll be next week.
No, I think they're going to hold him out. I mean, I think you want him healthy for the playoffs. Maybe like a game or two, like to tune up. I mean, he's 41 years old. I mean, I posted about this. I think the dude should consider retirement. Like, he had 11 broken ribs and a punctured lung. I mean, I don't know.
That's not good. Last time I checked, that's not good.
Yeah, it's not good. He's already rich. He's 41. He's got kids. Like, maybe consider retiring. I think Packers are good too this year, though, man. Rodgers might get an MVP, I think.
Oh yeah, it's his to lose these next 3 weeks. I mean, Mahomes,
it's like him and Mahomes, I think.
Yeah,
right? They're
Mahomes
like the leaders.
and him. And Mahomes had a shit game last week, even though they won. But
yeah, he had a bunch of interceptions, right?
Yeah, the numbers point to Rodgers, even without all the passing yards. It's just the efficiency, and if you put Rodgers in the Kansas City Chiefs offense, he would throw for 50 touchdowns. So
well, he's got Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce.
exactly. So we have Devontae Adams and a bunch of fourth-round receivers. So
right. Yeah, I think if it continues like this, I would think Rodgers would get it. And I think he's kind of carrying his team more than Mahomes is, even though Mahomes is obviously very good.
Oh yeah. So you're a head coach, actually, right? Am I getting this?
I'm a head soccer coach. Yeah, that's right.
So okay, what is your strategy? Are you like a full pace attacking, or are you like let's ball control and wait for the best opportunity?
So I would say, like even higher level than that. I believe in like Golden State Warriors like strength in numbers approach. So that's where I like spread the playing time around a lot, and like more so than I think other coaches do. Where I want to make sure everybody plays a lot, and in terms of like whether I push the pace, like I basically I have the guys that run a lot, and we're basically trying to like that's one thing. But it's one thing you can do, right? If you run a lot, if you sub a lot, then you can play an aggressive, like fast-paced style. And so it's a lot of passing and basically trying. Like this season was weird for my kids. So I coach my son who's 13, and because of the pandemic, they were playing small side. So it was like, was it 5 against 5 on these little fields with little goals. So the strategy is very different. You're trying to get really close to the goal to be able to get it into the goal, But we practiced a lot. I try to practice twice a week, which in the rec league, I think a lot of people are practicing once. And I worked a lot on like skills around the goal and then like scrimmaging against ourselves. Like you ever play World Cup soccer?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we do that at the end of practice, get people to have a good time, make sure you have good team camaraderie. But like I like the Warriors, like Steve Kerr, he's into like joy of the game. Everybody plays, that kind of stuff.
So there's unlimited substitutions for this league. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. So this league, it's not like Premier League or something where you have like 3 subs and you just like once they go in, that's it.
Yeah.
You just free subs. You can sub anytime you want. And so I would make sure everybody played at least half the game, and then in the fourth quarter, anytime anyone got tired, they just came out, and then you give them a breather, and then go back. But it was a lot of fun because it was the first time I'd coached at that level, and we did well. Like we started off, we lost our first 2, we tied our third, and then we won 5 in a row.
Damn.
And the 5 was like dominant, like 25 goals to 1.
Jesus.
We were just like crushing everybody.
Did you have angry parents yelling at you?
I mean, I think not negatively, no. I mean, like it was the parents were happy. It was cool. I was a very positive coach. So I've had coaches who've screamed at me, and I don't claim that can never work. But first of all, for recreational soccer, I don't think that you should be screaming at people. And there are other coaches who do scream at people. I'm not a screamer. So I was pretty positive, and I think everybody was pretty happy. I mean, when you win, it's sort of like in any sport thing. If you're winning and everybody's playing, people are happy. There's nothing to complain about at that point, really.
It's a great formula.
Yeah. So it was a lot of fun. I like coaching. I had a lot of ideas about coaching from watching my kids, and it was fun to actually be able to do it.
So then what's it like coaching your son, though? I mean, like, are you biased? Like, all right, you got to get in there, man. Come on.
Yeah, so probably a little bit. I mean, it's hard not to be, right? I mean, like, you want your son to succeed.
You're fucking Doc Rivers over here.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I tried not to be. I try to be pretty chill about it. I think I did an okay job. Because you don't want to be. I mean, I guess I've seen a lot of coaching that I didn't like. I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to be the dude who's like blatantly favoring his son, or the dude who's like screaming at everybody. So I tried not to do those things. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think my son enjoyed it, and I guess I'll do it again in the spring. I like basketball more than soccer, so I might try that at some point. But I don't know, man. Sometime, maybe not now, but at some point you and I should go play basketball again.
Dude, I'm in Lafayette, man. Let's go to the fucking hoops. They got nets now at Girard Park, and I'll
bring my son. My oldest son is 16, and he plays at his high school. He plays. It's a small high school, but he plays. He's pretty good. He's almost as big as me at this point.
Damn.
So he would be, he'd be fun to play with, probably 16-year-old.
Remember when we went and played in Brooklyn and we ran like all out, or at least I did, in one game, and then
I remember you got like sick.
Yeah, dude, I started throwing up because I overexerted myself, man. I was like,
I do remember how you were like laying on the ground. And like I had to like take you home and like make sure you had water and stuff. It was pretty funny. Dude, that was fun though until you started vomiting. It was a good time.
That was a gut check for me. I was like, dude, I'm fucking old now.
You got to like when you're old, you have to get in shape. You can't just like show up. Like you're 25, you can basically just show up and like you're good.
Yeah.
But when you get past 30, it's like, all right, maybe I gotta ease back into this, get into shape.
Yeah, I was lacking the calculated decisions of like, should I chase this fast break or should I just lag back?
Just running. Yeah,
I was running sprints up and down the court the whole time, and then my body was like, dude, what are you doing? You haven't done this in 12 years. What's happening?
Yeah, that's what happens, man. If you haven't done it for a while and you're a little bit older, then you're gonna struggle a little bit. But yeah, I actually haven't played with my son much since the pandemic started. So I think he's definitely gotten to the point where he's like at least close to as good as me, which is kind of a weird feeling.
But he hasn't beaten you in 1-on-1 yet.
No, he has beaten me once.
Uh-oh. Phil, you're an old man.
Then I beat him right after that. So it's not like he can only beat me, but he did beat me once. It got my attention because I hadn't played in a long time. And I was like really out of shape.
Here come the excuses.
I gotta make excuses.
Here we go.
I'm not just gonna admit it. You gotta make excuses. So like I was slow, and he had gotten a lot faster because he's been training. Right, he's on a high school team, so he's like lifting weights, practicing, doing like calisthenics, and so he's quick.
Taking steroids. God damn it.
Yeah, right. Hopefully not. Here he comes now, actually, but.
Right on, man. Well, look, man.
Yeah.
Look, I'm in town. We can do this. We'll wear masks while we play. I don't give a fuck. Let's just go.
Sure. Yeah.
Let's take some shots.
Sounds good, man. Yeah, let's get together. It's good chatting with you again, man.
Thank you so much, Phil Whitman. And where can people find your math workbook for kids?
So it's on Amazon. So it's called My First Christmas Math Workbook. So. No, but my wife is cringing. I don't know. I must have said something wrong. Anyway, it's on Amazon. I can maybe put a link up wherever you're sharing this if you want.
Right on, man. Just send it to me and I'll get it up there. And hopefully, man, get some sales, get some people some math, and we'll go shoot some hoops soon.
Sounds good, man. Thanks a lot.
Phil, thank you so much. Peace.
You're welcome. Bye.